그러면 이번에도 녹화 영상으로 연사님을 만나보실 텐데요. 이분은 40년간 기업에 계시다가 대학 TLO로 옮기셔서 20년간 대학기술 상용화 업무를 담당하셨고, 현재는 해외 기업의 미국 시장 진출을 도와주고 계십니다. 초기 단계 잠재력 있는 스타트업 글로벌 시장 진출 전략이란 주제로 델타텍 인터내셔널의 프레드릭 로저스 파트너님의 발표 영상을 함께 보시겠습니다.
Hello and good day. My name is Fred Rogers, and it is a pleasure for me to spend some time with you today talking to you about discovering high potential startups and entering the US marketplace. Some background on me: I had a 42-year career as an entrepreneur, mostly in the technology space. The last 20 years of it, I spent commercializing university developed technology. So I am well aware of Autumn. I was a member, and I understand what it is that you do and how you do it. I sold my company in 2016, and I have spent my time both as a professor of entrepreneurship, but also I take foreign companies, small, high potential foreign companies, and I help them enter the US marketplace. And I want to talk to you about that today and give you some examples of what I've been doing. So I want to take you through four things today as quickly as I can. First, is this right for you? What kind of preparation do we need to do to decide whether you should enter the United States marketplace or any other global marketplace in particular? Once we've decided that this is a really good opportunity, and I have experience in both rejecting projects and accepting them, how do we go about doing it? What makes it different? How do we execute on that? Then I'm going to tell you some stories of projects that I've been working on and finally end up with some final thoughts. So to start with, when I talk with potential small entrepreneurs, my first issue is, do you really want to do this? So we're going to cover, do you really want to do it? What is your value proposition? What are we actually selling? And we're going to spend a lot of time on that. What's your business model? How big is your market? Who are your customers? Who's actually going to write you a check? And who are your competitors? And we need to know these 6 things in order to decide whether this is the right thing to do or not. So, what's your motivation? Is it because you think there's free money out there? You're just going to find somebody in the US who's going to sell a lot of your product, and it's not going to, it's just going to pour money into your coffers. If that's your motivation, it probably won't work. There's no free lunch. Okay? Licensing, however you're going to work at it, this is difficult. You have a new project in new technology from a foreign country. It's going to cost you something, both emotionally and work-wise, and a little bit of money. Mostly what it's going to cost you is effort. And are you prepared to pay the effort necessary to do this? What's your value proposition? Products have features, and mostly because you're university people, you've been working on projects that have incredible features, but customers don't buy features, customers buy benefits. So what is the benefit to a customer of these features that you have? And you have to be able to clearly enunciate that. Now, this would imply, and it perhaps is out of order, that we have to know who the customer is in order to know what benefits the customer would achieve by having these features. And I've borrowed a couple of graphs from business model Canvas and Osweiler's work on the value proposition, and I would encourage you to really dig into the value proposition. Products have benefits, they have experiences, they have features, but customers have needs, they have fears, and they have wants. And how do we translate that is the key part of this. If we can't do that, um, we're going to go nowhere. The other thing that I want to point out here is that in your value proposition, have you Americanized it? There are differences culturally and experience wise from an American customer to a Korean customer. Have you considered whether your proposition, whether your value proposition meets the American needs? I want to throw in this particular graph right away because it's part of my belief system that customers build products. And this is a great example of a picture. So somebody was paid a lot of money. Some expert architectural design person was paid a lot of money to design a sidewalk. But as you can see, apparently that's not what the customers want. The customers wanted something different. And so you have to be very concerned as you start out, as you start to acquire customers, that you have to listen to the customers and you have to understand what their needs and uses are. And here is I think a tremendous example of where nobody seemed to pay attention to what the actual users wanted. How big's your market? Are there enough real customers to make a profit? You know, I was told a long time ago that there's 1.5 billion people in China and they all drive bikes, and so lights for bikes would be a big winner. That's not true. You have to be able to identify how many people really need the value proposition, and you have to be hard on yourself. But on the other side, the market has to be huge because, as we're going to see in a minute, you're not going to get a very big slice of that marketplace. So if the market isn't big enough, it's going to be really hard for you to break in and to make some money. So how big is this market and do we really know what it is? And we need to spend some time looking at that. What's your business model? I was working with a company that had a new ultrasonic device to give facials to women. And one of the business models was to sell the equipment to beauty salons all over the United States. The business model that they wanted was to open beauty salons and be in the retail business of selling facials to women in malls. Same technology, same features, same thing that it did, uh, but the model was completely different. One was selling equipment, the other was opening stores in malls. And so you have to understand, what is your business model? Um, I was involved with a company out of Macedonia that had a new piece of software for making flying drones more efficient. And the question we had to ask was there a market for selling software to people who fly drones, or was there a market for flying drones and being more efficient and capturing some value in terms of our drone was better than other people's or our software was? Um, And lastly, and we should put that maybe before, tell me who your customers are. Who's actually going to pay money? Not who's going to distribute your product, not who's going to inventory it, not any of that kind of stuff. What I'm interested in is who actually writes a check, whether they write the check to a distributor or to some other organization. You only make money when a final customer writes you a check. And the idea that you can find a distributor and they'll stock product and you'll get rich doesn't work if they cannot sell your product. And so in the early days, in a startup technology company from a foreign country into the US, you need to understand who's actually going to write you a check, who's going to use your product. That's all that really matters. And lastly, who are your competitors? What are we up against? I was told a long time ago that a cat and a shotgun are a competition for killing mice. And so I want you to think broadly about how people can solve the problem that you're addressing. So your technology has features. Those features translate into some benefits which solve a problem that the customer has. If there's no problem to be solved, there's no product to be sold. But there are lots of ways to solve problems. Tell me who else solves those problems. Now, of those 6 preparatory things, I am the least interested in the competitors. If you don't have competitors, that might indicate that nobody's interested or has a problem. You have made a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. So there has to be competitors. That is good. And obviously, seeing as you're a startup or an early stage company, your competitors are by and large much bigger than you. And that has its pros and its cons. What I like to do is I look for products that have many small competitors. That is the ideal marketplace. Somebody who has some other competitors. I want you to think for a minute about this particular problem. If there are no competitors, if you have invented something that is truly so unique that nobody else in the world has ever thought of it, then you have to go into a customer and explain how the product works and why it solves a problem before you can convince them that yours is the solution. On the other hand, if there's a lot of competitors out there, if those competitors are going into customers and explaining what the solution to it is, all you have to do is convince them that your solution is a better one than the competitors. And so having competitors is really useful. Uh, I don't want to go into a marketplace that doesn't have competitors, but it's the least of my concerns of the 5 or 6 things that we just talked about. So, oops, I missed, sorry. So, how do we do it? We're ready to go. We've agreed on a project. We're going to talk in a few minutes about a project that 2 projects that I'm working on right now. Um, so we're ready to go. What do we need to do to get ready? First of all, we have to understand the industry that we're in. We need to learn what goes on, what makes it tick, how do they think, what is the problems issue, where are the problems. Then you need to make friends. You've got to have some friends, and we're going to talk about how to do that. I'm going to talk about the 5 A's, which is a philosophy that we used in my company. To go through the sales process, you may know of it or under different names, but you have to take customers through that, and we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about finding first customers. Okay, we're going to spend some time talking about how to find innovators because that's the issue that you're going to come to. And then we're going to talk about how you're going to overcome your perceived risk profile in the United States. I have a project of very good, spectacular technology. And the entrepreneur inventor has no concept that his product has risk. It works in his mind, it's 100%. There's no risk at all. And that's causing problems because customers have perceived risks and there may not be any risk, but that's not where the customers are. So we're going to talk about perceived risk. So understanding the industry, I want you to figure out how does the industry work? Who is connected to who? And the best way we're going to do that is we're going to figure out, and the key to being successful in this particular business of bringing new companies to the United States is to join associations and make friends. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find out, and I guarantee you every industry around the world has industry associations. And the first thing I do when I pick on a new project or I go to a new country is I look for the associations that the industry exists in. One of my projects, which we're not going to talk about today, but one of them has to do with selling a product to railroads, and I'm interested in the Eastern European railroads. And it turns out there are 3 associations of Eastern European railroads. And I want to join those associations. I want to learn from them. I want to be on their mailing lists. I want to get their magazines. I want to talk to people. Um, there are in the literature, there are 2 kinds of people. Okay. One are called mavens. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but mavens and connectors. So a maven is someone in the industry who knows everything. They're not necessarily going to talk about your product. They're not going to help you, but they are the go-to person in any industry. Everybody knows them in the industry, and they are the person that you would call and say, hey, what do you know about this, or do you think this works, or whatever. They're the most knowledgeable people in the industry, and if they don't know about you, they're not going to be able to say anything. So because your customers are going to check with the knowledge keepers of the industry, you walk in and you sell a product, and your customer is potentially interested, and the first thing they're going to do is they're looking for validation. What does somebody know? And they're going to check with mavens. So you need to find the mavens. Before you start making sales calls, you need to find the mavens, and you need to find connectors. Now, connectors are interesting. I've known a lot of connectors in my life. Connectors are people who won't pay much attention to what you do, but you'll tell them, this is what we do. We have a new kind of drone. And the first thing they will say is, oh, you need to talk to so and so. They don't really want to understand your technology, but they have a connective capacity that they can make in their heads, and you need to find those people. And thirdly, don't talk about the competitors. This is not about a battle with them. It's not bad mouthing them. It's not, just don't address that. I was trained 50 years ago by IBM, and IBM never, one of the rules IBM had was you never talked about your competitors. You only talked about yourself. And I think that's a tremendous rule in going forward. So the first thing you have to do is make some friends. And you're going to make friends by joining the associations and by meeting people who are industry experts. Next, you're going to deal with the 5 A's, which is the sales process that you're going to have to take a customer through. The customer has to go through these 5 steps in order to be a successful customer. And if you're going to be a successful company, you have to take your customers through these things. And the first one is awareness. And everybody knows that. You know that your problem right now is that nobody in the US knows you exist. And before they can buy from you, they have to know you exist. And so there's a whole series of steps, social media and other things, conventions and trade shows and other things that you can do and that you have to do relatively early on in order to create awareness. Now, we're going to later on in a minute, we're going to talk about awareness to who. Okay. The whole world doesn't have to know about you. Only your potential customers have to know about you. And one of the things that most companies waste a lot of money on is because they think it's a random walk and that they don't have any idea who the customers are going to be, they're going to try and let everybody know they exist, and that costs a lot of money. So you have to make your customer aware you exist, but you have to understand who your customer is before you spend a lot of money. And I think that the key here is don't spend a lot of money. You can create awareness relatively easily. The next step in marketing is acceptance. And acceptance means that the customers believe what you have to say. You can tell them all you want to, and you can be adamant that you're right. But if they do not believe what you have to say, then you're out of luck. And the question is, the question they're going to ask you or ask in their mind is this information that I'm getting, coming from a credible source? Are you credible? Now, that doesn't mean, and many companies try to do this, they try to pretend that there's something that they're not. Just because you're a small Korean startup doesn't mean you're not credible. Okay? But you have to make it clear that what you are telling them is backed up by facts, it's true. Okay, you don't have to pretend that you are Samsung. You just have to be credible, and they have to accept what you have to say as true. If they do not accept what you have to say as true, and that's on them, it's not on you, they won't go any further. The next stage, of course, is adoption. They're going to write you a purchase order. They want to buy your product, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. But many of you have actually bought something and you actually never used it. It's in your cupboard somewhere. It's in your desk. You've bought something and you haven't used it. And so just having a customer buy your product and then moving on and selling to someone else isn't going to do you any good. You need to make sure that the customer actually uses the product that you sold them. First of all, you're going to learn a lot about how your product works. But second of all, you're going to get a happy customer, or maybe you have to work with that customer to make them a happy customer. But if you do not get him to use your product and get him to be happy about using the product, you're going to be dead. And lastly, of course, that becomes the fifth A is affirmation. He needs to tell other people that your product works and he likes it. And you will, I teach this all the time. If you go from customer to customer to customer, one at a time, trying to sell customers, there's not enough time in the day and you don't have enough money to be successful at that. You need your first customer to bring you two other customers. And those two other customers have to bring you two more customers. And the law of leverage, the power of two is the power that's going to drive your business. So that means we're not in the business of actually selling tens of thousands of Americans. We're in the business of selling a few Americans and lighting a fire in their head so that they talk to other people. So who are they going to talk to? You've all seen this. This is a very famous uh, bell curve that applies to almost anything in life, and it certainly applies to selling innovative products. And everybody wants the early majority and the late majority. That's where the money is. I understand that everybody wants to have a product that sells like that, but that's not what's going to happen to you. What's going to happen to you is you are going to concentrate on this 2% of people down here. So the problem that you face is if you just randomly walk through the marketplace, you have a 1 in 50 chance of finding a customer. You've got a better odds in Vegas than you do of randomly walking through your customers. Very few people will buy something new. Now, that newness means new product that you have invented or from a new country, those kind of, or new companies. So new doesn't necessarily mean the product is just the only thing that is new. I was taught by the inventor of the bell curve that this is a risk reduction process. And these people are the only people who are prepared to take risk. Now, I understand, and I've been at this long enough to know that potentially you think there is no risk. My entrepreneur in the project I'm going to talk to you about thinks there is no risk, right? It works. So in his mind, there's no risk. But there is risk. Those are the only people who are going to buy from you. So how do you find them? That's the key. And if you can find them quickly and inexpensively, you're on your way, because those people are watched by these people. It's word of mouth. These people will talk to these people. You don't need to work very hard once you get here. In fact, there's studies that will indicate that that ideas which reach about this point here are unstoppable. Okay? So the issue is not to worry about this group of people. The issue is to worry about those group of people. And how are you going to do that? Well, these people turn out to have some interesting attributes, and I don't have a lot of time in order to explain them to you. But two things that I want to identify. Most importantly, they don't care what other people think. They will make their decision on their own. So you're looking for people who are able to make decisions on their own on the strength of what you tell them. Now, what you tell them has to be credible. What you tell them has to be true, but they don't need other people to tell you what to do. Uh, and they're not price sensitive. Okay. Those are the two things. And you can see from the other things that they know. So, what we're looking for is people who have these attributes. Only 2 out of 100 have them, but that's who we're looking for. And if we can find them, they will buy from you. But you have to have three things. And I want you to think about this as a pandemic. It's the reverse of an epidemic. Okay. You have to have a message. That's the content. What is your message? Okay. What is your message? What is the the important value proposition? What are you selling that is going to resonate with people? Who is bringing that message to you? So if we think about a pandemic or a virus on an airplane, the content is the virus, but the carriers are the people on the airplane. And what's the context? The context is they're all locked together in an airplane. So, what is the message that you have? Who's going to bring that message? Who are the best people to bring the message to the customers? And under what context is that message? So the context could be that drones are a big deal right now. Whatever the important problem of the day is the context around which you bring. So you need to think about what is our content, what are we saying, what's our message, who's bringing it to you, and what's the environment for that. So in summary, what are we going to do? Okay, we're going to find mavens and connectors. That's important. We're going to find first customers, which are weird, by the way. Okay. But we've just talked about how we're going to go about doing that. We're going to shorten the time to their followers. We're going to make sure that whatever we do shortens the time before when they buy and when they start talking to other people. We're going to work with our first customers. We're not going to ignore them and say, oh, we got a check, we got a sale, let's move on for another sale. That's a mistake. What we're going to do is make our first customers really happy, because if we make them, make our first customers happy, they will take us to their followers. And when they take us to our followers, the sales will explode. And so I want to caution you from just going from one customer to another, trying to make them sell independently of each other. That's not the way the world works. Do you have a product risk? Of course you have a product risk. 9 out of 10 products actually fail. Okay, there's a scalability issue. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So you have a product risk that you have to address, and you also have technical risks. Does the technology scale and does it work? So there are two risks associated with that, and I think you need to understand and address the risks. You may think there are no risks, but there are in the customer's minds, and you need to address that. So let me tell you a couple of stories quickly. I have 3 minutes left. These are two of my projects. One is a huge industrial project which turns municipal waste into little pellets, into sludge. And so it is a $1.7 million machine. It's a very slow process in the selling process because it's a big piece of capital equipment. The problem is the context is incredible. In the United States, landfills are becoming refusing to take in municipal sludge anymore. The carbon emissions from sludge are significant. So there's a lot of context. What's our message? Well, our message is we're turning your own sludge into a fuel, and then you're burning the fuel, so it's an incredible cost savings issue. Who is our customer? Well, it turns out that we thought our customer was the municipal waste people, but it's probably not. It's actually the consulting people or the people who are currently hauling sludge. We're working with a group that have, picks up sludge from municipalities and charges them a lot of money per ton. And you would think, well, we could go to the municipalities and they would save money, but they don't really care. They pay money and the sludge goes away. But the sludge haulers who charge them a lot of money to haul it away would like to reduce the cost. And so that's an interesting example. It's been an interesting project, and so that's an example of a very large one. This one is a software app. It's an app for university students, and I became enamored with this one because when I was a professor, uh, all of the students claimed that they were under stress, which was actually quite funny. They really weren't, but stress and anxiety was a high thing at the universities, and this is an app to help the students work their way through their anxieties and their stresses, and so this is a B2C kind of play along the way. Just some other details um, to consider. You understand that under the new administration, manufacturing in the U.S. is going to be almost mandatory because you'll be punished by tariffs if you manufacture in Korea and bring it over. The world is changing, and you think you need to adapt to that. Secondly, you need to think about communication. You want to look American. You want to have an American phone number, an email address, a website. You want to have American banking. You want to look because Americans, and I'm a Canadian, so I can say this: Americans are parochial. They think that there is no other country, and so everything has to look American. So that's just an administrative problem. And lastly, and I have 1 second, nothing Nothing beats being at the right place at the right time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful, and I'd love to hear from any of you if you have any more questions. Take care.